Alright, this will probably be the last video I do on YouTube. I thought I'd share, I was thinking about what my thoughts were relating to the goings on of not just the past week, but the past couple months. The whole storming of the Capitol, the various election allegations, the way that the media has reported on these things. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd basically written everything I'd wanted to say about this back in 2017. It was in this book, In Events of Hatred, that you can find on Amazon for now. And there were, I suppose I'll start with the last sentence just because it sort of puts everything in context here. I'll do the last two paragraphs. If by happy chance a few of my enemies happen to read this, I am glad for them and for myself. With luck, their understanding of my arguments will be clearer, their arguments will be stronger, and perhaps from this they will find the courage and the ability to put away slander and violence, and once again make the battle one between ideas. And if not, the greater the glory for those of us who saw the war coming in time to prepare. So, for the record, for those of you who are new-ish to this idea of not just an upcoming American Civil War, but the idea that America is already in a civil war. This is not exactly an original idea of mine. I like to think that I have had some original ideas. This is not one of them. I follow other smart people, and I'm reasonably good at evaluating if an argument is good or not. And the people who make the argument that we are currently in a civil war is pretty good. And by point of contrast, for those of you who follow Scott Adams, for those of you who don't follow Scott Adams, you should. Scott Adams talks frequently about filters on reality. We can't perceive reality objectively, so we use filters in order to make sense of the sensory information that we see in the world. And when Scott Adams analyzes current events and news and how people say things and so forth, he openly says that he is using a persuasion filter. That means he's viewing things from the perspective of what's persuasive to people. And he says he does this for two reasons. One, it has pretty good predictive power, and two, it makes him happy. And he says that's the best standard for determining what your filters should be. And I would tend to agree. I think that there are different filters, however, that are going to be more applicable to different situations. So at one point, a month ago or so, Scott Adams said that a civil war is not going to happen in the United States. And the reason that there's not going to be a civil war is that no one wants a civil war. No, not a single person, he says, not a single person wants a civil war. I think that assumption is a byproduct of his filter. And I think it's a transparently bad assumption. It is very, very obvious that more than one person wants a civil war. A lot of people want a civil war. A lot more than the bottom threshold necessary for a civil war to happen. A lot more than that number want a civil war. They're just not sure if they can start one or not. I'm not saying this is a good thing. I'm just saying it is. But the reality is that a civil war is not coming. A civil war is already here. We are currently in a civil war. We are currently in a fourth generation civil war. Now, Tim Pool talks a lot about a fifth generation civil war. I'm increasingly skeptical that fifth generation war is a real thing. I think fifth generation war is just people piggybacking off of William S. Lind and using his terminology, a legitimate military theorist, in order to talk about this idea of just propaganda conflict, which is pretty normal. There is no such thing as peace if fifth generation war counts as war. What China is waging on us is not fifth generation war. This unrestricted warfare that they talk about, it is a lot more than just information. It is fentanyl. It is currency manipulation. It is disinformation. It is all kinds of things. It is every single facet that they can influence through. And the main problem with fifth generation war is that this idea that the moral constraints against violence will hold completely fades away the moment that you acknowledge that you are in a war. It is not, no one thinks it is morally wrong to do violence to an enemy combatant. It's only morally wrong to do violence to a fellow countryman. And if you believe, or an ally, and if you believe that you are at war with someone, those moral constraints go away. It's only a matter of what's practical in the face of neutral, legal, and governmental barriers. So, like, cops are kind of features of the terrain that both sides will use for and against each other. And I bring up all this Civil War stuff because as a filter, as a way of viewing the world, it has a lot of predictive power. People are talking about, well, look at how the media is reporting on 8 months of rioting, and they just brush it under the rug. But one riot, just one riot, storming of the Capitol building, which is in most ways pretty comparable to the storming of the Senate that the left did. Was it a year and a half ago? The Supreme Court confirmation hearings for Kavanaugh. They stormed the Senate there, no problem. But this is a coup. If you think that we are one nation, this makes no sense. It's very confusing, and it's going to be very, very baffling. Now, I said the second standard that Scott Adams uses for selecting his filter is whether it makes you happy. Why would you choose "we are in a civil war" as a filter? Because that doesn't make me happy. I don't imagine it makes most people happy. But it does make things a lot less confusing. It makes things a lot more sensible. Oh yes, it makes total sense why the media would call violent riots that kill and injure people and destroy cities mostly peaceful protests, while a single, protest expressing rage at a, we'll see if YouTube catches this, probably stolen election is a coup attempt. If you believe that we are one coherent country, that doesn't make any sense. It's going to feel unjust. But if you perceive the current situation, climate, as we're in the middle of a civil war, we are in the middle of a fourth generation war, violence is not off the table. It is not just an information war. It is a kinetic war. It's not a full-on hot in the trenches war, but that's not how wars are fought anymore. It's not how the Soviet Union really fought in Afghanistan. It's not how the United States fought in Iraq or Afghanistan. It's not how no one fights that way anymore. It's a little more complex than that. And so, thinking about how to look going forward, the recommended reading here would be Malcolm Gladwell's book, Blink. And in Blink, Malcolm Gladwell describes the Millennium Challenge of 2002, which was a very, very expensive and comprehensive war game. Team Blue was the entire United States military and its allies. Team Red was a rogue military dictatorship in an oil-rich country in the Middle East, which was played by Paul Van Riper, a retired Vietnam vet, and he assembled a general corps of stockbrokers, of all things, because he valued their quick decision-making abilities. And the first thing that Team Blue did is wiped out all of his communications. They sent missiles within minutes of the beginning of the war game. They sent missiles and took out all of his communication infrastructure. What did Paul Van Riper do? Well, somehow he was still able to launch planes. Somehow he was still able to coordinate. Somehow he was still able to keep things going, and he eventually sunk an entire battle fleet. 17 ships and 150,000+ simulated soldiers dead. It was a huge defeat for Team Blue. That cutting off of the I'm not going to plot spoil it for those of you who haven't read it, because you should go read it. How Paul Van Riper was able to keep communication going. But I think what we're seeing with Twitter and with Facebook, and probably Instagram and YouTube soon too, is Team Blue nuking the communication infrastructure. Now, you can see that as a serious disadvantage, but with the right mindset, and if you have the training that Paul Van Riper has, maybe, which is why you should read the book, you can take it as an advantage. You can say, what Team Red lost was the ability to listen in. What Team Blue lost was the ability to listen in on Team Red's communications. What was lost was the intelligence gained by keeping those communications open. Conservatives are going to find themselves increasingly less able to speak, to express themselves, to make arguments. Now, if you begin with the filter that we are one nation and that we need to heal, we need to come together, it is absolutely critical that you be able to express yourself and to make your arguments and to be heard. And so this is quite a devastating thing. It feels completely unjust. But if you begin with the assumption that we are in a war, that we are not allies with these people who are censoring us, but that they are an opposing team who are trying to undermine and subvert and dominate you, then, is it a good thing or a bad thing that they can't hear your opinions and your thoughts? Maybe it's a good thing that they don't know exactly what we think. Because I'll say this, I was incredibly disappointed with the riot in the Capitol on January 6th. But I was not disappointed for the reason that everyone else is disappointed. We'll leave it at that.